Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I am Nerder Doug, and tonight I am going to discuss a badass evil son of a bitch with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about Vecna, and before we get started, let everybody know this live chat is powered by our awesome sponsor, D&D Beyond. Down below in the description, you'll find a variety of links, including one to the Vecna dossier, which is free for if you have an account, a free account over at D&D Beyond, which we'll be discussing tonight. There's also, that's available till June 16th. There's also an adventure over there based on Vecna. And there is a link to our own portal at D&D Beyond, which I believe we're the only third-party people with such a thing, where our out-of-the-box encounters are there, and you can go check that out. And there's also a link to a website post about Vecna as well down there, so you can go check that out too. And I am doing awesome. It's Monday, and I'm excited to talk about the Whispered One with you.
Yeah, so this is this is what I have to say. It as both as a DM and as a player. I have not really encountered or used Vecna. So this one is going to be, an interesting, and speculative talk for me.
Oh, that's cool.
When I look at just this first paragraph of what's in this dossier, and it's not a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
On Countless World, his name invokes tales of terror and cruelty. Vecna, the Undying King. Vecna, the Whispered One. Vecna, the Lord of the Rotted Tower. Over more than 100,000 years, incandescent hatred carried him from the humblest of origins to a conqueror's throne, then to the realms that lie beyond life and death, and finally to godhood. Many have suffered his terrible wrath, but few can recount how a lowly scribe left an aeon-deep scar on the multiverse before ascending beyond the material. Altogether, only a few fragments of Vecna's story have been unearthed. Holy crap. There is so much, and just that one to unpack.
Oh yeah, totally iconic, classic D&D villain that's been around since the just Whispered, and that's what's kind of interesting, like because I have used Vecna and themes of it, all my going back to being a kid, and it's kind of interesting that they're to see that like they're really focusing on it now, because it always is just like little whispers and snippets in books of his name and in the Book of Vile Darkness and stuff like that. And of course there's been several like adventures over the years, like Vecna Lives, Return of Vecna. I don't even remember half of them, but there's a lot of things about Vecna out there, which is really cool because it's like you can still access all that stuff and get inspiration over. I mean, the DM's Guild has like literally all those things that you can go find and add to your game if you want to just find out what the legit lore is. And I'm sure there's tons of websites. One of my go-to sources for like D&D lore is the Forgotten Realms wiki, which is forgottenrealms.fandom.com. I often wind up there when I'm looking things up because it's just a huge repository of D&D lore. But one of the most interesting things about Vecna, I think, is you can see the heavy influence of fantasy author Jack Vance in it, because his name is just an anagram of that, who also is the inspiration for the entire D&D magic system that's been around, Vancian magic. So it's kind of tied to that.
I was not aware of that little nugget, so sharing.
Yeah, sure. You know about Vancian magic, right? It was like spells are like little demons that live in your brain or whatever.
Yep.
But Vecna, I have used him several times. Most recent time was I ran a game for my brother, who I started playing D&D with, my older brother, way back in the day, and he hasn't played in decades. And I knew he'll like some classic stuff, so I actually used one of our own out-of-the-box encounters, Touch of Grey. Which is like a chamber with like a skeletal king on a throne, and there's like a dagger in its head, and all these zombies covered with you created actually a gray mold covering them, and I tweaked it a little bit that all their hands were missing. And like as soon as I said that, like he was just like, "Oh shit! Like this, we got to get out of here right away." Because like he knew even from back being a kid, it's like this has to do with Vecna. I don't want anything to do with it. Like it was just immediate like terror on their faces, which was great. That was totally the effect I was going for. So
yeah, that's an awesome way to kind of start it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have cultists with missing hands or missing eyes just to start seeding the things in there.
So I think there's a lot that you could wind up doing, with it, and even like so much that Vecna is so powerful. I'm gonna keep jumping back to this thing paragraph time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely.
His name evoking tales of terror and cruelty. So like you could literally take any undead that is in there and just be like, all right, in the D&D verse, be like, all right, I'm going to use Vecna in this guy's place, and he's using advanced magic to just duplicate some of those kind of effects, because he's not going to die, permanently if you wind up somehow killing him. So he's doing whatever his goal is. So, all right, I'm going to take on this other title, and I'm going to be some other person, some other thing, and I'm looking to just wait for that aha moment, just to F with a group of adventurers, really getting into the eventual terror and the cruelty of that eventuality. So you could literally be having Vecna from the beginning, watching and doing things, using magic to save life and being, people or, a person in town, as well as then being the literal undead that they're fighting and being the big bad. And oh no, you destroyed his thing, and he just whisks back to his phylactery, and off you go. And even if they somehow destroy that, he still can force himself back into existence whenever you want, I
don't even think he has a phylactery. He's an archlet. Just like he just cannot be killed. Like you could destroy what the body that he forms, but it's like they'll just come back. Yeah, as you were talking to, boy, you want to like set up a dramatic campaign start, have the adventures, with their first level, have them witness other heroes defeating him. Maybe they could see the battle and just like maybe they witness him unleashes what's the thing called? Flight of the Damned, and just watch like, it could be like an army fight facing Vecna, and it's just like, yep, he just waves his hand and like 1,000 of them die and become zombies or whatever under his control, and like, maybe you see like heroes beat him but they fall in battle or whatever, and it's just like, well, that kind of sets the tone for the campaign. Interesting enough, on the D&D YouTube channel, they're talking to Ray Winninger, and he sort of, pointed out, which just to make, just in case you are a DM and they do defeat it, and it's like, oh, he comes back after 1D 100 years. It's like, or tomorrow. I mean, it's just like whenever you. I mean, like yeah, that's what it says, but you don't have to do that. It's like you can come back right then if you want.
It's like what they call guidelines.
Yeah, right.
to quote the Pirates of the Caribbean, it's meant to, and that's who I was, kind of quoting without remembering who it was that I was quoting. But like, yeah, it says 1D 100 years, but it's literally wherever and whenever you want. He materializes on the plane of existence, and it's at a time frame that you think works. So like, it could literally be Vecna's plan to just kind of harass the players for as long as is possible, just because he's deciding to torment them. He could literally be the person that's hiring them to go fight himself. Just for amusement, just like, yeah, let's see what they can do. And since he can't die, there's really, no end in it. Or maybe it's like, well, you know what? I have this evil item. I want to spread more evil to the world. So maybe I can test and see if one of them can be corrupted. And we're putting this item, back into existence and whatever, just to see. But then I look at the next, several sentences: the Undying King, the Whispered One, and the Lord of the Rotted Tower. So I love titles.
Oh yeah,
the bad guy that's like, oh, I'm this. To me, that means that means something. Obviously, the Undying King is because he does not die. He sits on a throne and he rules over things. So, all right, sure, that one fits. The Lord of the Rotted Tower, well, that clearly means he's got a place that is full of necromantic energy.
Oh yeah,
or of zombie flesh. to me, that means the tower itself is both, kind of alive and undead at the same time. I don't know if there are stats for the rotted tower somewhere, but to me, there should be, or there could very well be.
I want to say in some, bit of material about Vecna, it's like between the planes of fire and shadow or something. It's like on the border.
No,
there's actually a free adventure over at D&D Beyond too. I forgot, featuring Vecna, which I don't think it's the rotted tower, but it is in a tower.
Yeah, the Citadel of Kativ.
Yeah, that thing.
That, for a time, he says he inhabited the palace known as the Citadel of Katilivus, located in the vast field of ash somewhere between the border of plains of earth and fire.
Ooh, quasi-elemental plane. Nice.
That's in, the dossier.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And that, again, that's the only reason I know it. I mean, this might have been, far more informative if, it was you and Dave, because he probably has dealt with Vecna far more than I have. Like I said, to me,
yeah, he does seem to be like a savant with like D&D masters and lore and stuff like that.
So, like I said, my things are more speculative.
Sure.
And, how would you use? So,
well,
finish the Whispered one. Really, to me, is like, all right, his name invokes tales of terror and cruelty. So even saying the name can make people terrified. So perhaps, claim the title of the Whispered One is because it scares too many people to just say it in a normal tone of voice. So that's my guess as to how that name came about.
That's pretty astute. We'll say, spoiler alert, in that adventure, because I read through it, every time a player at the table says the word Vecna, their character takes like necrotic damage. And it's like, I think if you actually whisper it, you don't, but it's like, and it just is like cumulative too. So it's just like, and you're like trapped in this tower. So, I mean, that's kind of a cool, and that's what's cool about about Vecna, like thematically too, because it's like, in some ways, he's very unique in D&D lore. It's like he's a god, but he's also like was immortal, and he appears in different like versions of himself. So he kind of like by his nature just breaks all the rules of D&D. It just, you know what I mean? Like he's got multiple reactions, and all the like mechanically in this version and stuff.
I love things like that. I've made NPCs or big bads that can do that kind of stuff. I mean, I had with one of my last campaigns, the big bad could cast basically like a subtle counter spell like multiple times around. And so like it was a subtle thing, like literally like as per like the sorcerer's meta.
Right.
So therefore you couldn't counter it because you don't actually see him casting a spell.
Yeah. Right, and that's especially being like a man. His main thing is magic, so it's just like, well, of course, you could be able to like manipulate magic and all that kind of stuff. One interesting thing to note, because somebody had asked about on our Facebook page, was that they noted like, oh, he's still got his eye and his hand and stuff in that art. But I think we talked about, and you pointed out too. It's like, well, this is Vecna from prior to Kaz betraying him and cutting off his hand and eye. He's just can appear at any time, anywhere in the multiverse. So it's like, this is just a version of him before that happened.
Yeah, it says the accompanying stat block depicts Vecna in his Archlich form prior to Kaz's betrayal. Because Vecna is said to have mastered magic, allowing him to travel through time, he can appear in this form even on worlds where his severed hand and eye are already known artifacts.
Yeah, and that's really cool too, because that kind of like speaks to like some of the earliest inspiration for the whole game of D&D being like Michael Moorcock's like Eternal Champion stories, where it's like, there's just entities that like they can appear in other worlds where they have existed before and things like that. And, so that's kind of another cool like sort of breaking the rules concept to play with.
All right, so because you brought up that aspect, I have an adventure idea to throw out there. and you tell me what your thought pattern.
Sure.
We know, based on what I just said, that Vecna has the ability to appear wherever, whenever, even on worlds where, he already is said to exist. So what about a group of, let's say, lawful evil characters? So, they're lawful, they can work together. And this is the adventure hook. So everybody's got to buy in.
Okay.
And the goal is to hunt Vecna throughout the multiverse so that everybody has a hand and eye of Vecna.
Oh my God. Yeah, that would be fun as hell. But, and like I alluded to at the beginning, which is my number one Nerdarchy clip of all time, is Ted points out, if you want to go that route, then everybody in the group's got to be one badass evil son of a bitch, because you have to chop your own hand off and pull your own eye out yourself to graft those things onto you.
Yep.
And they confer immense power. Yeah, that's an awesome idea.
So I just, I like to, like I said, I want to use the information that's in this, little PA to be like, all right, how much adventure can I fuel with the ridiculousness of these? And, whether you want to start from the beginning and Vecna is literally playing puppet master on both sides to basically, pardon the abusive language, but to just fuck with a team for as long as possible before it's like, all right, should I just kill you outright? Or, am I going to just go on longer?
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with like time streams as well. It's like, you could really mind F the parties. Like maybe you find out at the end that's like, you were set on that quest by Vecna, and it was just like, yeah, I just wanted to see, it's like, sure, I just wanted to see if you guys could do it. And, you think you're trying to seize his powers. Like, nope, that was my plan all along. And, it's interesting because, again, on our Facebook page, which you should go check out because there's a lot of interesting conversations over there. Somebody had mentioned the dossier, and they're like, oh, I feel like it's kind of like, it's pretty small and not very, detailed and stuff. Like, first of all, it's totally free. So it's like, can't really complain. But second, it's like you see from our discussion, I think that's kind of the point, because Vecna, it's like this huge, broad strokes thing. But then you just start thinking about it like you're doing, just like, well, this little part interests me. What do I want to do? How do I want to make Vecna in my campaign? And it's, and highlight those aspects, because it could be any and all of those things cranked up to 11.
So I was talking to some people, and the feedback that was initially coming across when this was first shared was, first and foremost, Vecna doesn't have legendary actions. What's up with that? He's got 5 legendary resistances per day. He's got a bonus action which allows him to cause damage and get out of combat with people. So like, you're never going to pin him down.
Yeah. As a bonus action, you can do that every turn.
Yes. There's no limit.
Right.
Go away. And if he damages somebody when he teleports, he heals.
Yeah. A significant amount, too. 80 hit points is nothing.
80 hit points out of his 272 that he has, by default.
Mm-hmm. Right. And again, and even that, people are like, that seems low. It's like, that's the average. I mean, if you maxed it out, even that, let's see, what would it be? 384. And that's just, again, you can always just amp those up if you want to, but
right.
If you max it out, 384, getting 80 every turn from doing that.
He then either can use a spell, which he's got, a list at will, and then some other abilities that he can just use a number of times per day.
Mm-hmm.
And then, one of these special abilities, and to make 2 melee attacks.
Yeah.
Which, does a decent amount of damage for a melee attack coming from a spellcaster.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you're hit with his attack, it winds up causing lingering damage that until you succeed on a saving throw, you can't regain hit points.
Yeah, a pretty hefty saving throw too. DC 20 con save. That's nothing to sneeze.
that's going to be hard for your spellcasters. So like those are the people that he's going to hit first if he's doing this right.
Yeah.
A intelligence of 22 and a wisdom of 24, he should be wise enough to, make that move of, all right, bring down the healer and the wizard first, then move in on the fighter. Because he's eventually going to fail that saving throw. And then, you know what? No second win for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. I didn't even think of that.
That's healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, he's got his crazy reactions, which he can take 3 per round, but only 1 per turn. So basically, between everybody's turn, he can do one of those if he wants, which is to not only counterspell, but damage them when they fail or when it works. They take damage.
So he's got Dread counterspell, which if the spell is 4th level or lower, it automatically counters it. But if it's 5th level or higher, he makes a check. And if it succeeds, the spell has no effect, and the caster takes damage, psychic damage.
Yeah, which is great.
And if that's not enough, he can, in response to being hit by an attack, he can cause the person to take damage, and Vecna teleports, away.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And if you, and see, and that's the thing too. So I've seen a lot of people, talk like same as you, where it's like, he seems weak, and that it's like, well, one thing to keep in mind is like, material has to be appropriate for sort of like the baseline player. So, you know what I mean? So it's just like, well, not everybody's like a finely tuned tactical hit squad that is like, tuned to the max. So it's like, well, you want to make him even harder. Then how about when he does his spell rebuke, his little teleport is his vile teleport. So he just regains 80 hit points with that teleport too. There you go. Just like that one little tweak, it's like that'll make it a hell of a lot harder for your hardcore players, right?
But the thing to look at is like, all right, the fighter, moves his 30 feet, gets his first attack, and Vecna says, fell rebuke. You take that. I'm going to teleport 30 feet away. What's that? You're out of movement speed? I guess you're not using the rest of your attacks this round, huh?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
How many times can you do that, fighter?
Yeah. And then on top of all of those other things, one of the coolest things, if you look real close at the art, his full body art, you'll see in his rib cage, there's he actually has his own Book of Vile Darkness in his body.
Yes.
And there's a really great sidebar that, it says the DMs, it's like, you want to make it really hard? He can also do anything from there, which is a huge amount of crazy powerful stuff.
If the DM wishes to run a more challenging and more complex encounter, Vecna may call upon any of the book's abilities as appropriate. Is literally part of what it says in the little, caveat. And it's fantastic art. And like, it took a little bit of looking around to notice that he's got the book like literally secured in his rib cage. And I just that was really well done. Does it say who's the artist on this?
No, but somebody pointed out though it kind of looks like Chris Bergen's face. I was like, wow, because they had it like side by side, and I was like, maybe they did. It probably says somewhere, but I don't.
Well, it's not on the dossier.
Yeah.
I would like it because I mean the artwork here is really fantastic, and for a unique undead, I think that they've nailed this person. The only thing that I think might have made this a little bit better is to really give him the aspect of he's on a throne. He's got to me that's reminiscent of a crown. Already got so much extra filigree. It would have been nice to have something sitting up there. Maybe
that would be cool,
like the shoulder,
or like floating above his head, maybe because like a Sareck. Maybe they thought it looked too much like a Sareck because it's sort of like
maybe.
But if it was floating above his head, that'd be pretty dope, like an evil looking crown.
All right. So
one of the things that because I'm fascinated by the little lore as there as you is that actual book, and I don't know if that was. I think that's always been the case, but just how it describes like. Well, I don't want to take away your thunder. I don't know if you wanted to go through more, but just how it describes like, it recorded. It's like a book of all his foul thoughts and dreams.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't going to go down that far.
So okay.
I haven't gone through. Like, I'm taking apart this first paragraph just to see how much that I'm drawing from that.
Okay. Yeah.
So literally the next part of the next sentence is over more than 100,000 years. Forget about what comes next. Vecna has been around for 100,000 years.
Yeah.
All right. That's a lot to take in of this figure traversing the multiverse for 100,000 years. When I scroll down and look at these stats of intelligence 22 and wisdom of 24, I don't think that's high enough. Unless like he's spent thousands of years in limbo waiting to come back after a defeat here and there.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think those stats are a little low.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. It's like I would think his intelligence might be a little higher, especially since he's like an arcane wizard,
right?
At the core. Yeah, that makes sense. But you know, you could jack it up. It's well. I guess what would that affect if you made it go up? His DCs,
yes,
right? Yeah, which makes sense that they would be extremely difficult to resist.
Right, and that's probably why they've lowered that threshold. He's probably got a higher wisdom to represent his age and to, you know, up his passive perceptions and insights and that kind of stuff. But
yeah, right. It's like if his spell save was like 30 or something, be like, good luck.
Right. But it then goes on to say, incandescent hatred carried him from the humblest of origins to a conqueror's throne. All right, not a whole lot to unpack there. They go into more detail about him, you know, being a necromantic witch and a father that he never knew. Like, all right, those are pretty, I hate to say it, almost like cliche things for villains to work with. Like, oh, you know, daddy wasn't around and, you know, mama was already evil to begin with. All right, that's kind of cool to work with, but nothing new. Then he's gone to the realms that lie beyond life and death, and finally to godhood. All right, so he crossed over into absolute undeath that, you know, we know there's Lich and Arch-Lich, and then, you know, he makes it to godhood because so many people are worshiping him for the hopes to gain power and, of course, fear.
Mm-hmm.
So that in and of itself could really bring, you know, the part that you were talking about earlier about cultists and people going into that realm of terror and cruelty. You know, what if, you know, pages from the Book of Vile Darkness have kind of several different cults.
I like that.
They're working on, well, I just want this aspect because that's what they have. So you've got essentially cults of Vecna that are geared on this type of undead or this type of necromantic power. And, you know, whether he's literally ripped the pages out of his own books or made copies and just sent them into, you know,
I like that idea a lot, of the pages and stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, to like a cultist, dude, like just having a page would be like, you know, like mind blowing. Like, oh my God, like this has so many secrets that we can exploit and stuff.
So, you know, maybe this cult has access to this spell and this cult has access to this ritual.
That's really cool.
So like you can see the world, and again, going with that idea of you're got a campaign against Vecna. What are you going to do to lessen his power in this realm? You've got to take out his support. If he is a literal god, worshiping gives him power. So like, what if you ramp up his vile teleport that instead of 80 hit points, what if it heals a ridiculous, you know, 160?
Yeah.
And that extra 80 is broken out into 16 cults that exist into this world.
Ooh, yeah.
And if you literally defeat them to a every single one of them are defeated, that's 5 off of what he.
Oh, that's a really cool idea. Yeah, heck yeah.
And you could do those kind of compartmental abilities and boost Vecna that much more powerful. You know, perhaps it's a flat 5 to all of those abilities, you know, not his teleport, but it's going to do extra damage on his Flight of the Damned or Rotten Fate. Maybe, you know, each one increases his spell DC by 1 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Starts up at 27 instead of a 22. You know, and lessening that power really just destroys, you know, the stat block.
Yeah. You could. Oh, you're saying when you defeat him, it makes his power less.
Yeah. So like,
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, that could. You could hit like that's why you could reuse him too. It's like maybe he just, they characters barely survive, or they manage to, drive him away, right? And then they learn, oh, if we go after these cults, especially since he's a god, and it's like, oh, people worshiping you, give power. Like the next time we face him, we got to take out these cults, so he is not that powerful. That's pretty sweet. So I was just scrolling around in that. I forgot it. The Book of Wild Darkness has one of my favorite things. It's like, in order to destroy it, it's like if all evil in the multiverse is completely wiped out, the book turns to dust and forever destroyed. So it's pretty much impossible.
So I'm gonna pause the Vecna chat for just a brief moment.
Sure.
Last week we announced our ERD giveaway, but I was specific to the ERD stuff that was sent our way. We still have our regular giveaways. We want to double up last week. So our friends over at Lost Lorn did a Kickstarter that we were a part of. We were a stretch goal. So that was the Curse of Bloodstone Isle.
Oh, that stuff you did was really cool for that.
So I had made a magic item that was like a shark tooth dagger, and there was a cool NPC who was like a were eel. I had a lot of fun making that dude up. Well, they sent us a copy to be able to give out to the fan base, and it's not just like a single book. It's actually several different things. So you've got this one little flip through. You've got a mini GM screen, which has got the blight rules on it.
I like that.
Heartless of the Night Queen. A couple other things. The two core books, both hard leather with some cool artwork on either side. So I
like that landscape format too.
As well as, and I'm not going to open the whole thing, but it's like a pretty huge map of the Bloodstone Isle.
Is that shaped like a turtle?
All right, well, it's kind of has some turtley vibes to it.
Yeah, that's great. That's a pretty cool project. I didn't realize there was that much stuff to that.
Yeah, so all 5 items, and apologies for the vagary of the winner, but there's no last name. So if you happen to sign up under just the name Andrew, it could possibly be sent to you, because I don't know how many just Andrews we have, but I'm going to send out an email probably this evening and get your address and send these out your way. And as is the usual, whenever there's something that one of us has done and you want me to sign it because it's here, I will do so, but it's absolutely under no obligation to do so, because I don't want to deface someone's free book if
sure.
they don't want me to.
Yeah, that stuff you came up with was pretty cool. One idea I thought of too as we were talking and exploring the idea of the time stream, it kind of reminds me of Kang from the Marvel Comics. And it's like, maybe there's like a council of Vecnas that sort of like meet to make sure that they don't like screw each other over and stuff like that. And it's just like,
oh my God.
Again, it's like you want to have a, because I know like there's players that would look at that stat block and be like, our party of like 14th level adventurers could take this guy. It's like, sure, well, then maybe you fight 2 Vecnas or 3 or 5 or 100 of them or whatever.
That has literally blown my mind. Council of Vecnas.
Yeah, because that's in the comics. God. Kang, like they have like a base that's like outside of time and space that they meet to make sure like they don't screw each other over and like they don't mess with things too much.
Wow, I don't know what to do with that.
I stumped Ted, man.
whenever, which is one of the reasons why I don't muck around with time.
Yeah,
time is one
tricky
of the things. Like if you're doing in something that's entirely narrative and you have 100% control of it, that's fine. Go and do all you want with time. But when you start having other people collaborate, time just becomes all fuckery.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't like to deal with it, which is why like kind of like even the concept of chronomancy, where you're even talking about like small fragments, like you got to be really careful. It's like, oh, this thing happens in a couple of years from now. All right, well, I guess we have to sit and twiddle our thumbs. No, let's just teleport there. No traveling through time. No, now.
Yeah, it's just, I've like contemplated like campaign ideas where it's like maybe by the end you realize it's like the place you get like was caused by you because time, but it's like players make too much. It's like you couldn't keep it straight unless you just like shoehorned it in.
Yeah,
in which case it kind of loses.
It's possible. There are definitely great GMs out there who can make it work, or like if you have some catalyst moments of like, all right, I've got this set in stone, and the players would have to like specifically work to undo the events. But it's really difficult to play around with that kind of stuff, which is why I'm usually I'd rather say no.
Like, right, sure.
I'm not gonna go down that road. All right, so my business is dealt with in regards to administrative duties. So I'm going to move on to the next sentence. Many have suffered his terrible wrath, but few can recount how a lowly scribe left an aeon deep scar on the multiverse before ascending beyond the material altogether. So that just kind of like sums up a little bit what he said before. He started off as a scribe, working for a wizard, and went beyond the material, So your first two sentences are definitely far bigger than that one.
Mm-hmm.
But the real thing that says here, only a few fragments of Vecna's story have ever been unearthed, which means all the lore that is out there about Vecna, the pages and pages of adventures and lore, are just a drop of water in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Vecna.
Yeah, like you said, like in earlier, it's like 100,000 years. That's a long time.
So, to really catapult off of that, there could literally be prime material planes that have fallen, and literally nothing but undeath because of him. There is no life left in that world, no humanoids, no animals, no plants, and everything that's there, that has any kind of sentience is entirely devoted to Vecna and his designs.
Yeah, that's some crazy high stakes. They even give like an adventurers just a glimpse of like, this is what could happen to your material plane if you fail. So like there would be nothing alive in the entire material plane. That's scary.
So like that could be like, all right, if you wanted to really span, the life and breath of a, multi-tier adventure, all right, forget fighting Vecna and just pushing him out of this world. All right, now we're 20th level. We've defeated Vecna, and we have somehow devised through divine and whatnot power, there is a sigil upon this world, and Vecna and his evilness cannot return. But now, as a 20th level adventurer, we're going to foray across the plains.
Oh yeah,
you are going to wipe out the undeath of an entire world. Where
that's an awesome, because it's kind of hard to think of like adventures for 20th level characters.
The plants, the animals, the things that are alive, you're not going to find solace. You're not going to find people to go have a conversation with.
There's no tavern.
Everything here hates you for being alive, worships the being you destroyed, and you have a time limit to just wipe it and destroy everything before Vecna comes back, because now you're not
Man, that's exciting.
Left your world. He can come here, and here is where he's strongest because everything here is his.
Yeah. Wow, that's a great idea too. Like, because like I said, it's hard to think of like what is like a high stakes, capped venturing party adventures. Like, well, making sure other material planes don't get completely annihilated seems like a good place to start.
So, that's just the first paragraph, and the idea is that it gave me And really, that's only 3 sentences.
Yeah.
The third one doesn't do a whole lot for me because all it does is kind of re-say what was said before. Not that it's a bad sentence.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't give me anything new.
Yeah.
It specifically calls out that he was a scribe.
Yep. And a boot black. Which
Yeah,
is like a weird detail to throw in there. It's just like, yeah, well, that, and he used to shine boots too. So.
Well, they get into that part earlier.
Yeah.
Or later.
So yeah, I've been chatting. People in the chat have been chatting it up too. There's a few questions in here I saw. Juan Garcia, Star Star says, I never get to catch one of these. Are they certain topics? Yep. Every Monday we pick a topic related to D&D, whether it's something specific or general, and we just chat about it for an hour and take your questions. So if this is your first time here, thanks for stopping by, Juan. We'll be here every Monday at 8 p.m.
Yeah, and just, you can always come back and watch the other ones later, because
there's a whole playlist, and then we follow these up with a weekly newsletter. The following weeks will be based on that, where we often will make up new game content that you can drop right in your game, or just write editorials with further thoughts on it. Gary Camden has one of my favorite questions that I love to answer. How long should a new person wait to try and DM a D&D game? Immediately. DM for your group. Actually, if you're curious, there's an article over on our website called Start with a Single Encounter, because that's a manageable thing. It's like maybe you just pitch your friends like, hey, I want to try playing D&D. Just run an encounter. Whether it's just like, I had 30-minute session just to get your feet wet, but just dive in.
And if you're looking for more guidance on that, our out-of-the-box designs, which, like, as much as I want you to go buy the book, we have plenty of out-of-the-boxes on the website. So it's free to go there and check it out and be able to say, all right, we kind of give you the problems that you might not even be thinking about and what to do should your players do that kind of stuff. So it's very educational in how to run and how to pre-think about some problems that wind up happening.
Yeah, they're not really combat encounters, and they're not full adventures. Just like, here's a scenario in a discrete location with, like Ted said, like guidance of like, well, here's what, because here's what players might do in our experience, when faced with these things. So yeah, just start there.
But back to Vecna, Brian says, how do you remember all the spells that Vecna would have at his fingertips? The way he's designed, it's actually much different than a usual spellcaster. So his spellcasting is at will. He can cast Animate Dead as an action, as opposed to a minute that it normally casts. Detect Magic, Dispel Magic, Fly, Lightning Bolt, Mage Hand, and Prestidigitation. So all of those he can do as often as he wants per day. No limit.
Wow, Dispel Magic at will is pretty boss.
Yes. Even Lightning Bolt at will is pretty nice. Yeah. Animate Dead at will, very nice.
Yeah, just filling the field with things. I mean, yeah, imagine he just flies up, keeps animating dead every round, dispelling your buffs and stuff. Yeah, I mean,
twice a day he can cast each Dimension Door, Invisibility, and Scrying. Again, as an action. None of this ritual nonsense for him. Then once a day, Dominate Monster, Globe of Invulnerability, and Plane Shift. But sadly, when he shifts planes, he can only take himself.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry, minions.
Now,
I'm out.
If there is a spell that you want your Vecna to have, feel free to put it in there. You know what? I want him to be able to cast Meteor Swarm once a day as well. No problem. Go ahead. In there. Maybe you don't want Globe and Vulnerability. Maybe you don't want Dominate Monster. You just want to bring the damage down. Or maybe you want to add it in. When you're talking about a challenge 26 monster, you can pretty much amend as you see fit if you think the party can handle your adjustments. And I would make some changes to this if I were to go ahead and run them. And pretty much what I would do if I were running this guy, you'd fight him more than once. And every time you fight him, there would be changes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You can't,
I mean, especially even with the scrying and stuff. It's like, I mean, if he was fighting the same adventure several times, like you better believe he's going to have spells that are designed to deal with the things that you can do specifically.
Or like take notes. What did your players do? All right, now we're going to change up the resistances. Now we're going to change up, because, whether you're using the Book of Vile Darkness or whether you're using the revised Book of Vile Darkness that you made.
Yeah.
You can give him extra stuff and have fun with it, because that's ultimately what you're trying to do. Is this guy is designed pretty much the way the Mummy Lord is. Yeah, you might be able to bring him down, but he's coming back. And he's
right. And that's the scary thing.
And he is no small 60 hit point Mummy Lord.
Yeah, right. Who's vulnerable to fire. Crazy Hermit DM says, back in first edition, the eye and hand had random table of effects, so everyone had their own version of Vecna's artifacts. 5e is the same way. All the artifacts have, base powers, but there's also just like beneficial effects and things like that. So, which kind of speaks to that, multiversal nature of Vecna. Let's see. I always thought Cass was a badass. Yeah, I always thought that too. Like they never really said on Cass. I think I vaguely remember a piece of art, and he just looked like a dude with like a black beard and gold armor and a sword, maybe some pointy teeth.
I don't know much about him, but I can tell you that I have frequently mixed up, Kaz and Kaz the Minotaur. So, yeah, they are vastly different things. But the sword of Cass comes from Cass, who was a fallen paladin who served Vecna for a while, and it's never been discussed of why he decided to turn on Vecna, but they fought. Cass severed his hand and stabbed out one of his eyes, and that's why we have these two artifacts. So literally you could have somebody get the sword of Kaz, and maybe you can carve off some more artifacts. What is the pauldron of Vecna? What is the left hand of Vecna?
The middle finger of Vecna.
Well, that's a mage hand press thing.
Yeah, I just get a kick out of it.
But literally you could carve off pieces and try to dilute his power, if you will, and grow some of your own, or who knows, maybe you just become Vecna yourself, and that's how it goes.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a twist, huh? That would be a twist. Let's see, a Sareck versus Vecna. Again, it's just like you're talking powerful lich versus god lich. It's like maybe it's just the classic fanboy. Maybe it's just like you're talking Vecna, man.
Yeah,
there's no contest. Let's see. There's a 3.5. Vecna's skull is in. Oh yeah, Vecna's. I mean, especially now, it's like he's a pop culture icon out there, right? Thanks to Stranger Things. It's like, man, everybody knows who Vecna is. And, of course, it's just like all the Stranger Things. It's not the exact thing, but the young kid nerd in me is just giddy anymore in this day and age. That's like, your average person on the street knows who like Thanos is and Vecna. It's like I would have never in a million years thought that those, obscure like nerdy things would be like pop culture icons.
So if I pulled up a Sareck, so he's a challenge 23 versus Vecna. The proficiency bonus on Vecna is an 8, whereas Sareck is only a 7. So that in and of itself definitely, sparks some question. Sareck has access to 9th level spells and can cast 2 of them per day. So he could technically cast Power Word Kill and Time Stop, which is crazy. Not that Time Stop is what it, once was, because you can't just unload a bunch of attack spells all at once.
Yeah.
He's got Paralyzing Touch, but, Vecna's immune to being stunned. So, is immune to
and paralyzed.
Paralyzed. So not as big a deal there. You can't charm him. You can't charm Sareck either. So no dominations for these guys. So they're definitely not going to get in on that. but there's no real healing that I see in Sareck's stat block here. So like pretty much once he goes down, he's done. Like
Yeah.
Whereas you can see the Vecna heals 80 hit points whenever he teleports, and he can do it every round. And dear Lord, why would you not?
I really like how they did his special equipment, because it's like that really addresses something that like a lot of players wonder when they fight, like special NPCs with stuff like, well, why can't I pick up the thing and do it? It's like, sure you can. For you, it's just a +2 dagger. Like it's his ungodlike hatred for all life that is actually providing the extra powers it has.
And that's another aspect of like, all right, number one, from a design perspective, that's a lot of fun. Well, perhaps should you decide whatever comes along with that, whether you look at the stat block of like, it's affected with entropic magic that does necrotic damage at the start of every turn of something that's been hit with it. Well, perhaps there's a way to unlock that power in Afterthought, but the question is, are you willing to pay the price? Do you have to become undead yourself? Do you have to essentially do things that are vile to unlock it? Maybe you have to literally serve Vecna's cause, without being Vecna himself in order to do this. It could be a quest, like solo quest, or, the quest for the whole party, just to be able to fulfill that aspect. I'm all about unlocking magic items, powers, and making them grow, because if a player's in on it, sure, I'm here for it. Let's make this happen. But from the design aspect of, I'm making a monster that I don't want to worry about giving out treasure that has this weird or wonky ability. All right, now we just have a new caveat of, all I have to do is tag it with special equipment and say that, well, you get this thing, and it no longer has this power, it just is this. I'm super thrilled about that. That the design philosophy there,
for sure.
Especially we create content, so like that has come up for us in the past of like, well, I want to do this, but how?
Somebody asked on our Facebook page too. They thought it was weird that like the aesthetic in the art, which I think is pretty cool. And they're like, why does he have that same look as like the one? It's one of the Dark Lords, like Ankapet or whatever, from the Van Richten's Guide. Like for me, I mean, that's just one artist representation, but I'd imagine to some extent, it's like they probably are just going for like a similar aesthetic in the D&D lore. It's like that's just what undead lich lords and mummy lords tend towards, that sort of aesthetic. I don't know. I mean, it was kind of a weird comment, but it's like, like I said, it's probably just making their brand stronger. It's just like that's what they look like. They want to look like that. I think it looks a lot cooler than just like a desiccated man in black robes. It's like what it usually looks like in the past.
Sure. Like I said, I love what's there.
Oh, me too. I like how it's like you can't even see feet. It's like maybe there's just nothing under there, and you just like floats, with like the tattered cloth.
The floating spellcaster is fun and has been done, a lot. Not that I'm saying it's a trope and needs to be avoided, but I've done. I have one of my players in the untraditionally arcane game that is trying to save time, in between sessions. So there's been conversations that have happened back and forth between some characters and the NPC, and it's like, this one character is always silent when they walk, and then something happened and there was they actually heard the footsteps shift, and it's like, I just assumed that they were floating the entire time. And I'm like, that cool. Could be an option, but you haven't managed to figure that part out.
What else I like about the aesthetic, which it shares with the book too, is like I could imagine that being sort of like animated, right? Like the book and stuff. It's like maybe when you open it, it's like locked and stuff, and those little metal things are like, like I don't know how to describe it, but you've seen it in like movies and stuff where it's like it all like retracts into itself and everything. Because really, I mean, that looks like it's just like a chassis holding his rotting flesh together on his body, right? I mean, it's like underneath that, there's not a whole lot there.
When I look at it, I don't like, other than like a little bit on his hands and his face, like there isn't skin. It's a skeleton that's covered with these almost metal. It's not armor because it's almost as see-through as the skeletons. But
I think it's super cool, man. And I love how that book's in there. That looks so dope. And the art on with the cover of it too, he's got like that thing, his claw, hand with the big gem on it and stuff.
Oh yeah,
super cool.
And that is like, is that supposed to be yet another item? Like, it's almost like a claw-looking thing that's supposed to be representative of what he replaced his hand with after his hand was removed, or that prior.
That's a great point too. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, again, you want to amp him up. It's like, well, I mean, he's missing his actual hand, like, but he has a hand there. What is that? Like, give him some more powers or whatever.
I mean, he's got a strength of 14. What if like an aspect of it? Oh, it's a belt of giant strength. So with that hand, he's got over a 20 strength.
Yeah, then all of a sudden the dagger just does a little bit more damage, and it even somewhere it does. I don't know if it says in the dossier, but on that Forgotten Realms wiki, it mentions like, a big part of Vecna's history is like he also craves magic items. So again, it's like, and a guy that's been around for like literally hundreds of thousands of years, destroying material planes, probably could just get any magic item he wants at any time. So
at a challenge 26, like he could he could just be like, all right, dragon, either become a lich and serve me, or you can just give me the thing you've got in your hoard that I want. What's it?
Yeah, right.
I'm going to be around longer than you are. How do you want to play this?
Yeah. It's like, worst case, he could just wait for the dragon to die of natural causes. Like, just come back and take it. Or just go forward in time to when that's already the case.
Yes.
Crazy. Yeah, just so many cool things.
So that's just an aspect of things to look at, another direction to go in.
We got one question here coming in at the 0 hour. What would the hand of Vecna defeat the Infinity Gauntlet? I don't know, man. Having just complete control over time, space, power, the soul, the mind, and what's the other one? Whatever it is, reality.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm gonna have to give it to the Infinity Gauntlet on that one.
Yeah, if you've got the full Infinity Gauntlet, I think that is like the creme de la creme of things to want.
Yeah, and especially like I remember, I was like a young teen when those comics were coming out. I was all about reading them. And it's like, as I recall, all the cosmic deities of Marvel had to have like a big meeting, like, hey, what are we gonna do about this? Because this guy could just easily take any of us out at any time and stuff. So I'm gonna have to give it to the Infinity Gems on that one.
But it's one of those kind of scenarios of like, you can't really compare fantasy to comic book,
right?
Because I think the starting power scale is different.
Yes, right.
It's higher in the comics world. So.
Oh, for sure.
All right. Final thoughts. Final questions.
One last thing. All day. So I play like Magic Arena. Also, one of my favorite decks I like to play. Which again, there's an article on the website about. I call it Vecna because they have the Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set. They have the book, the eye, and the hand as artifacts. If you get them all out, they do all kinds of things, but you can on their own. But you can exile all of them and create Vecna, who's like an 8/8 indestructible zombie god who has all the powers of those things, and you can do it as an instant. So I I like smoking people with that. It is so deliciously evil of a deck. It's like I feel like this is what must feel like to be Vecna. I'm just exiling creatures when they attack, destroying them, and just for fun, I also put in the Book of Exalted Deeds because I feel like it's just like that seems like something like a big fu he would do. It's just like, yeah, and then on top of it, I'm going to abuse that too. So go check that out. You can go find it over on the website.
So we're going to be back tomorrow night. I believe we're up to session 7 for our Zoom Mafia.
Woo!
Very much looking forward. We had our week off last time. Thursday night, I'm going to be over on Mini Terrain Domain. We're running a special one-shot.
Oh.
So it's not going to be the typical Dawnbringers game. It's going to be most of the regulars, but we'll be a new cast of characters for this.
Oh, cool.
Special thing. Even though we're used to playing 14th level characters, we're dropping it down to level 3. So that's going to be some rough, but some fun times.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be back on Friday with the normal live chat. So yeah, lots of fun things going on.
Absolutely.
So come on back, check out the things that you want to check out. And until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.